In this lesson, we'll explore how we can design the different pieces of the leg to be animated in a cutout styled fashion. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so just really quick, in between lessons, I basically broke down that right arm in the exact same way that we broke down the left arm. Again, just three separate pieces, the upper and lower arm pieces, and then the hand, and then we just broke down those joints, adding those invisible lines. That way, when we get into coloring our character in the next lesson, we won't see those little overlapping lines right there that basically make him look like a puppet, even though we'll be treating him like one once we add those pivot points in. Okay, so let's go ahead now and just hold down spacebar and adjust our drawing view canvas, and we're going to go ahead and work on his left leg for this demonstration. Now, before we begin, you'll notice over here in the layers section of our timeline view that I've added three new empty drawing layers, the foot, lower leg, and upper leg, and I've added two on the end of those as well because, again, this is the left side. Definitely try to have some sort of naming convention when you're dealing with two sets of anything, especially with arms and legs. So if you look at the right side of the arm, I have a 1 on there. That's because I'm right-handed, so I view right as 1 and left as secondary, okay? So we're going to continue on using our pencil tool. Let's zoom in here. And we'll start with the foot and work our way up. So we're just going to go ahead and do the outline of this foot. And this will be a fairly simple piece to knock out. We really don't have any overlapping parts of it on our sketch there. Okay, so I'm liking how that's looking. And so this is where we're going to have a difference right here. Since the foot, I'm imagining it as being kind of a yellow webbed foot. It's going to be a separate color as opposed to what we will have with the hand, which will be the same color as the arm. So we're probably not going to want to add an invisible line right here at all. Okay, so the foot will most likely set in front of or behind the lower leg, and if we have a line right there, it'll look okay. It won't look awkward. All right, let's go ahead now and focus on the lower leg. Just kind of adjusting our canvas there. And we'll go ahead and outline the lower leg. All right. Okay, so we've got that outline of the lower leg, and we're going to talk about this area right here momentarily, just like we did with the arms. So now let's go ahead and jump to the upper leg and adjust it as well. So the upper leg is going to be pretty similar to how we did the upper arm, except on both ends we're probably going to have to add an invisible line because we're connecting it to this area right here of the body shape, okay? So let's go ahead and we'll just draw the whole shape for the leg to start with. All right, so that looks good. Okay, so we don't want to have this line right here at all. We don't want it to look like a continual line right there. He'll look kind of like a puppet if we do that, or if a robot that's had that piece placed on him, and he's a duck, so we don't want that. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is grab my selection tool, and I want to convert that pencil line to a brush line. All right. And this is going to, again, just like we said in the previous lesson, allow me to use my cutter tool with just a lot more precision. Let's go ahead and actually do that to the lower leg while we're at it. Okay. Okay, so let's come back up to the upper leg. Let's hold down on our selection tool and choose cutter. Okay. And on our upper leg up here, we want to go ahead and be able to cut away very precisely the part of the leg that we don't want. Now, right now, I'm in the marquee option right here. For our tool, let's switch to lasso. All right, and I want to go ahead and disable the mouse gesture button. And I'm just kind of thinking of this area that I want to kind of trim away. And that looks pretty good. So now that's going to look a lot more natural as we'll have the same skin color of that exposed part of the body continuing on down through the leg. Okay, And so much like we did with the left arm, we're going to treat this knee joint just like we did the elbow joint. So I want to add an invisible line here eventually too, since the lower leg will sit behind the upper leg. So I'm already kind of thinking about the hierarchy arrangement as I will arrange our layers later on. So let's go ahead and cut this piece out too. Okay, excellent. And we can always kind of come in there with our contour editor tool later on and kind of maybe smooth out that little transition right there as it tapers off a little bit more. But let's go ahead and move forward and grab our stroke tool. Again, holding down on the paint button and then choosing stroke here from our different options. And I want to be able to see those invisible vector strokes, those vector lines. So I'm going to hold down the keyboard shortcut D, pressing that. Again, I just want to mention that I'm using the Adobe Flash keyboard presets. Okay, so just hitting Control Z to zoom in there, or Control equals, I might add, not Control Z. Okay, so basically we're drawing that invisible line to connect those vector lines together, okay, those contour vector lines. So that area now right there for the upper leg is walled off. So all we need to do now is do the same thing with the lower leg, and then we have the freedom to fill that in with color. So we'll go ahead and do the exact same thing down here. And so again, this isn't the only way to do this by any means. There is a number of different ways to basically get rid of these overlapping lines, some more advanced, complex ways, but I find that this is a pretty simple and approachable way, especially if you're just kind of starting to get into breaking down characters so that you can move these individual pieces. Okay, so basically we want to do the same thing with the opposing leg, all right? So what we can do is make a new layer for the upper leg for the right side. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy the name of this, and then we'll paste it. And instead of having a 2, I'm going to have a 1. Okay, let's grab our pencil tool. And since this upper leg, this right upper leg, is going to sit behind the body shape, I don't need to worry about adding an invisible line like I did there, okay? But I will need to add it right there at the knee joint. So let's go ahead and just still using our pencil tool there. I'm going to go ahead and draw just my entire shape for the upper leg. All right. And I'm happy with how that looks. So let's go ahead and create the lower leg while we're at it. So I'm going to go ahead and come down here, and I'm just going to copy that, save myself a little bit of time at typing. And of course, I want a 1 there. You can see how muddy it could get very easily if we didn't have those numbers on the end signifying which side we're on. It can be quite the nightmare, especially once you try to figure out what you want to parent to when we get into kind of creating that hierarchy arrangement. Okay, so that feels pretty nice. I actually may want to take the contour editor tool, maybe bring that part of the lower leg in just a smidgen. So just kind of tweaking. Go ahead and kind of zoom in here just a little bit. Kind of a funky little piece right here that I want to kind of rectify just a little bit there. Okay. Excellent. All right, so we want to basically leave this piece as it is because, again, we're going to have a foot that will probably sit in front of or behind the lower leg, and since it's going to be a different color, I'm not really worried about removing that line right there. However, we want to come back to the upper leg, and we want to cut that piece off. So we're going to we actually want to go ahead and make sure we have our selection tool. Let's select the upper leg. I want to convert that to brush lines instead so that it has a contour vector outline for it. And this again will allow us to use our cutter tool just a lot more effectively. It won't give us any weird cuts. It'll be very faithful to the selection that we make. Okay, great. And so we've made our selection. Let's go ahead and just delete that, hitting delete on our keyboard. And at this point, I could come in with my selection tool, or rather my contour editor tool, I might add. And I could come in here and kind of start to just kind of tweak some of these different spots in there. I probably could just delete that little point right there. Might see kind of what that gives me. So at this point, you can really kind of come in and start to kind of clean up some of these little areas right here that you have tapering in, right? Okay, and so we could basically finish out this lesson by drawing the foot. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead, do the same thing as I've done before, copy foot 2, place that there, switch it out with a 1. Okay, and we'll go ahead and just do the very simple outline for that foot right there. So he's got these little webbed, cartoony feet. And that'll be a separate color from his body. Okay, so in our next lesson, we'll go ahead and get into adding color finally. And we're just going to talk about kind of how we can do this and how we can keep our color separate from our line work just in case we need to come in and make any changes to either one of those. So again, as I mentioned towards the beginning of this course, we're in our line art mode. Again, these modes are, think of them as different layers that you can have for each one of your layers in your layers section of your timeline view. I know that sounds a little complex, a little bit crazy, especially if you're used to working in on an application like Photoshop, for example. Layers with layers, it's like an onion that you got to peel away. So stick around and we'll go ahead and tackle color in our next lesson.